It's Sunday night, it's 9:30, and it's time for the Gersnet Podcast, absolutely live and bringing you totally free Rangers content by the fans for the fans. We're here to have the week's last word on all the latest Rangers news. If it's your first time joining us, then remember that we are absolutely live and you can get involved in the show by leaving us your comments and your questions over on the YouTube stream. I'll be keeping my eye on that throughout the night, and we'll try and get to as many of those as we can. As always, the podcast will be available for download from Monday morning first thing. So subscribe to make sure you never miss a show from us. You can get that on iTunes, on Google Music, Acast, Stitcher, Spotify, and all the rest. Tonight on the show, we're going to be taking a look back at another successful trip to the Garden City of Motherwell, as well as an extension to the Europa League adventure this season, and one or two other wee bits and pieces from the week, including the small news of the gaffer sticking around for a few more years. My name's Ross Bennett. I'm delighted to be back on the show this week and being your Gersnet Podcast host for the evening. And as always, we've got two fantastic guests to join us on the show this evening. First up, it's the very own boss of the show, Frankie. Frankie, first things first, how was your trip abroad?
It was excellent, thanks, mate. As I was saying beforehand there, it's always good to get away. I mean, I've not been on holiday since January. We were away to Iceland for a few days, and that really hurt me in the pocket. This wasn't much cheaper going to Florida to Disney World with the kids, but it was a good fortnight away. So, and I wanted to work for another half day until the first week of January as well. So it's all good here, mate.
And I hear you managed to catch up with the Orlando Rangers Supporters Club as well and keep an eye on the games.
I did, I watched the Hearts and Aberdeen games on my computer just at the hotel, but I managed to get away for the parks and let my wife deal with the kids. But the Orlando guys welcomed me along to Game Changers on International Drive for the Celtic game. And I enjoyed a morning's beer with them, and I can recommend it to anybody in the Florida area if they want to catch up with the Rangers games. It was very good.
That's very good to hear. Also with us tonight, it is our one and only Colin Armstrong. Now, Colin, I hear you had quite the VIP visitor up to Glasgow this week.
Well, I don't know about that, Ross. How are you? Did you get your flight home okay?
It was all good, safe and sound. No, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was good to catch up. So I was up in Glasgow just before for the young boys game, and Colin and I managed to grab a couple of beers before the game. So it was.
I should point out I paid for them. You're on the bell next time.
See about that. How's your weekend been so far, Colin?
Yeah, I always try, if I'm not going to Ibrox on a Saturday, I always try and take in a junior game. Came on, their game was off yesterday, so I found myself up at Blackburn United against Crossgates, which was it was interesting in terms of the weather and stuff like that. It was a bit horrific, but I passed an afternoon, and today obviously watched the Rangers game, which we're about to discuss.
I can't say fairer than that. Like you say, we are about to jump straight into discussing today's game first, and then we'll take another look back at Young Boys on Thursday. Before I get into that, I just want to have a quick plug of something that's coming up that's going to be a really good event. Next March, we're going to have the 25th anniversary of the passing of the legend of Davy Cooper. And Christine, who's a friend of the show, obviously, and has been on the podcast a number of times, is helping to organise a tribute dinner in memory of the late Davy Cooper, which is going to be held on the 28th of March in the Thornton Suite. It's an international great weekend, so you've no excuse. Any information that you need is available at www.davycooperdinner.co.uk, and all the funds, all the proceeds will be split between the Formers Player Benevolent Fund and the Rangers Youth Development Company. So two fantastic causes there. Very, very much get along if you can. So head over to www.davycooperdinner.co.uk and take a look for all the information. Right, that's the pre-match talk done. I think the only fair place to start is with the discussion of Motherwell today. Another trip to the beautiful Lanarkshire town of Motherwell. Frankie, a bit of a slow start, a bit nervy. What did you make of the game today?
Aye, we did start a bit slowly. I guess probably that's to be expected. I mean, Motherwell have been on a very good run of form, so they would be approaching the game with a lot of confidence and probably want to get at us early doors, and they did try to do that. They knocked the ball about quite well. We were a bit wasteful ourselves in possession, but at the same time, they didn't really cause us any problems, to be honest. And we played our way into the game and got a bit more confident, relaxed. We had several chances. Again, Morelos was fantastic up front. I mean, creating stuff out of nothing. And I mean, Gillespie in goal for Motherwell had a fine match. And and it was probably only him that stopped us scoring earlier. But we got the goal at a good time, and it was the same with the second goal. Actually, I thought Motherwell were starting to come into the game a wee bit, and you're just sort of looking back towards the young boys game and thinking, let's not get deeper and deeper and deeper. And fortunately, we played well on the counter and got the goal. The red card was a bit of a nightmare. I'm sure we'll come on to discuss that in a bit more detail. But after that, even then, we didn't really look under any problems whatsoever. And I've got to give the team and the manager a lot of credit, because this was a really tough game today. As I said, Motherwell were flying pretty high in the league and playing well and scoring goals, and we really didn't give them a sniff. I think one or two lapses in the second half aside, they never really looked like scoring at all. I mean, I think we've got to mention the save from McGregor, which was fantastic, at 1-0, and obviously that was a very key moment in the game. But other than that, they never really looked like scoring, and it's, as I say, a lot of credit to the players and manager, because I was worried about this game today and a hangover for the other night there. I mean, that was 90 hard minutes in tough conditions on Thursday night, and today we finished the game just as strong with 10 men, so we've got to be happy with that. And obviously we've got the disappointment for Hampden last week, and again we maybe should have topped our Europa section rather than finish second. But all things considered, we're doing well here, and I think it's important to stay confident, keep morale up, and now go to Easter Road next Friday with a lot of confidence.
This was one of those games that you would kind of pinpoint if you're looking down the fixtures as being, definitely towards the trickier end. Motherwell, like you say, doing pretty well for themselves in the league. It's never an enjoyable place to go, Motherwell, although we do have a pretty decent record there anyway. But the fact that we're coming away from a tough midweek tie again, it's the very, very early kickoff at noon. It's kind of just one or two factors that were making this a difficult tie. Colin, we came into this one knowing that a win would put us top of the league, albeit probably only briefly, with Celtic entertaining Hibs in the later kickoff today. What kind of psychological advantage or disadvantage does that give you, knowing that if you get the win, the other side could slip up, but if you don't get the win and the other side get the win a couple of hours later on, then there's an even bigger gap there. Does that have an effect on the players?
I think I think it's obvious it has an effect. I've always argued that it has an effect, you know what I mean? And how games are arranged, if you're playing first or second, that does have an effect. I mean, people say it doesn't, but then there's, the leagues make sure that the last game of the season, all the kickoffs are at the same time. So that tells you that there's a benefit. So, this time last year, I mean, I know we beat Celtic in the 29th, and, I think we narrowed it to, I think we were on level in points, but Celtic had a game in hand or something like that. But I think at this point last year, we were about 5 or 6 points behind. It was already looking like it was a big ask. So, we've improved dramatically. And as I've said consistently on the pod, I've said this for a long, long time, I don't think this Celtic team, over the last 6 or 7 years has had a huge amount of questions asked it. And you don't know how they're going to react. So if we're playing first, it was a tricky game today at Morelos. It's always tricky when we go down the road there. You have to get the win and then just ask the question and see what Celtic come back with. So, yeah, it was important. Always important, because if you don't get the win, they're at home against Hibs, and they've got a chance to go even further ahead. But you get the win, you're holding their feet to the fire. And as I've said, we don't know how this Celtic team will react to that.
Were you surprised, Colin, at the starting lineup of the team today? There was, unchanged from midweek. And at the end of the young boys game, I'm sure you saw it as well, that some of the lads looked flat out, and we were dropping deeper and deeper and finding it hard to break away with the ball on Thursday. So were you surprised that there were no changes at all to the starting lineup?
A little bit, but part of me thinks, given the sort of game we normally get at Motherwell, it's usually very physical, as it was today. I mean, Motherwell treat this, they seem to be becoming another club that want to have a unique relationship with us, that want to hate us like, your Dundee Uniteds and your Aberdeens do. Over the last few years, the relationships between the two clubs seem to me to be a bit strained. That wee section in the corner, the Motherwell fans, there's been incidents with them previously, and obviously there was one today that we'll come on to discuss. So, yeah, I think with that in mind, I think Stevie G was maybe just thinking he would want experienced players in who have been over the course before. I still think there's an argument for Greg Stewart to be getting more game time and maybe one or two others. But considering the game today, I think he went with the right team, I must admit.
I think I agree with you, Colin. I mean, it's certainly the physicality of a Motherwell team is something that we cannot underestimate. And, you know, we hark back to comments made by Motherwell players about enjoying the physicality and kind of relishing that side of the game, laughing at Fabio Cardozo having a busted nose and that kind of thing. They're hardly for the football purists. So with that in mind, it was never going to be a game for Shea Ojo to start in. But I agree with you. It seems to me, though, that Gerrard is more settled now on his first choice. And maybe not at centre-half, and we're going to talk about centre-half in just a moment, but it seems that if Gerrard wasn't so settled on his first choice 11, we might have seen some rotation today, but the fact that we didn't makes it quite clear that he knows who his best players are now, in my opinion. Frankie, if we look at the first goal, Niko Katic comes back into the team. Obviously, he was playing on Thursday, deputising for the injured Philip Hollander. He's come in today and grabbed a kind of trademark Niko Katic goal. The thing that struck me about this was incredible desire from Katic to fight his way through the defenders and get to the ball. Is that the kind of thing that Katic can bring that Hollander maybe doesn't possess?
To a certain extent, aye. I think you see it a wee bit more evident than you do with Hollander, but I think it's fair to say that we're dangerous for corners. I wouldn't say so much free kicks, but definitely for corners throughout the season. And we score a lot of headed goals. Hollander and Golson have both scored their fair share. And it was great to see Katic score today, because I think the young man deserves a lot of credit. Clearly, he started the season very well, and I think we were all talking about on being our best centre half in terms of performance this season in sort of August time at the start of the league season. And obviously Hollander got into the team and has done pretty well since. So it's been a bit of a shame that Katic has dropped out, and a lot of players would have took the huff and not trained well, maybe put on a bit of weight, all the rest of it. But no Katic. His attitude is fantastic. Straight back in the team the other day there, played well against young boys and played well again today. I think Katic is still raw. I think there's times where he attacks balls where he doesn't need to, so I think he needs to temper that somewhat. But at the same time, it's that physical nature of his game, that keenness is something that makes him the player that he is, and he's an exciting player to watch, and that's why the fans sort of are drawn to him maybe more than they are somebody like Golson or Hollander, who are a bit more reserved than in the way they play. So it's you've got to be careful, as I say, with these young guys. You've got to be careful how you manage that keenness, because you don't want to take that out of the game, but at the same time you don't want them to be diving into stuff. And I think he was guilty of that once or twice in the first half, and possibly once in the second half. I think him and Golson got in a bit of a mix up. Golson went to knock it back to McGregor, and I think sort of Katic came steaming in a wee bit, and I think there's one or two balls that Katic went for, sort of headed balls that he probably would have been better standing off. But as I say, that's nitpicking really, because he had a good game, so did Golson, and we're really lucky with the centre halves that we've got. I think one or two games aside this season, they've been really, really first class, our defence. It's just a pity that the goals we do lose do tend to be quite clear defensive errors rather than good goals for opposition teams, and that tends to sort of put them under the microscope a wee bit when people forget just how many clean sheets we've had this season. So it's all good, and it's great to see Katic back in the team, and even better if he's scoring goals as well.
Well, I agree with you that he's got this kind of natural enthusiasm and keenness, but I'll slightly go maybe one step further and say that at times he does give me a bit of fear when that keenness manifests itself, like you say, in the wrong way, that he's diving in for headed balls that he's never going to win, and that he's leaving Golson, who's not the quickest of centre-halves, exposed and left with someone running into a wide open area. And that happened today after, 10, 15 minutes. Katic goes for challenges for a header that was closer to the halfway line than it was to the 18-yard line, totally misses it. And actually, if the Motherwell strikers had a bit more composure and a bit more ability, let's say, it should have been a goal. McGregor kind of caught in two minds whether he should have come for it or not, and does neither. and Tavernier ends up actually bailing the team out and does very, very well to get across and get to the ball first. That probably should have been a Motherwell goal, and that would have been the fault of Niko Katic. So I agree. I mean, with what you're saying, Frankie, and what Chris is saying here on the YouTube stream, is that Katic is the biggest threat at corners and free kicks, hence his goal today. I totally agree with that. I think he's a bigger threat than Goldson, a bigger threat than Hollander, certainly a bigger threat than anyone in midfield. But he does, it's harsh to use the word bomb scare, but sometimes he's just over enthusiastic, he's naive, and he goes to challenge for balls that he's got no right to win, he's got no ability to win, and it leaves us exposed at the back. And that's a trade-off with a young centre-half that you're always going to get. And he's raw and he's talented, but sometimes he does expose the side. Before we get on to the second goal, Colin, one big talking point, and it might lead us on to a larger point about the standard of refereeing today, which was abysmal. Before Morelos got his goal, there was a big penalty shout. In my opinion, he's been elbowed in the back of the head by this Mugabe character who's come flying through with no chance of winning the ball. Should it have been a penalty?
Oh, it's a stone wall penalty, Ross. It's not even up for debate. I've not seen it, but I have read on Twitter that the bold Michael Stewart tried to claim in Sportscene that it wasn't a penalty. But I mean, when you look at it in slow motion, Morelos he keeps his eye on the ball, doesn't look anywhere else, his eyes on the ball, and Mugabe comes through the back of him, just flattens him. So it's not even a debate that's not a penalty kick. It's a stone wall penalty kick. And I mean, I know that we'll talk about the Morelos red card later on. I thought there was one or two real bad incidents today. I thought the tackle on Kamara was pretty naughty. I mean, and Andy Walker done his best to just sort of play that down. There was a tackle later on Morelos that was over the ball that caught him about shin high. Well, two or three really nasty tackles, and they went unpunished. I don't know how many challenges Donnelly had, how many fouls he had after he had his booking. And yet again, we've talked about this a lot this season on the pod, and to be fair, a fair chunk of last season as well. It just creeps up time and time again, and I know a lot of Rangers fans don't want to go down the paranoia route and everybody's against us and all that kind of thing. But I think the evidence strongly suggests that we are being refereed to a different standard than most other clubs.
So then, if we go down that route, what's the club's best course of action here? I mean, it was a clear penalty. There were some terrible decisions. I totally agree with you, by the way, about the Motherwell lad who was booked and then continued to just make cynical, stupid fouls. But he was never getting a red. You can see it was clear as day. He was never getting sent off. So what's the club's best option here? Is it the behind closed doors channel, not necessarily diplomacy, but just not playing this out in the public arena? Or is it the statement route? Is it calling things out publicly and kind of, bold as brash, showing the displeasure?
I mean, I've kind of always favoured and I've always had faith in the club that they would be having these conversations behind closed doors, but nothing seems to be changing. So I think I was a little bit disappointed. I don't want to preempt the Morelos discussion, but I was a wee bit disappointed in Steven Gerrard today. I felt he had an opportunity to call it out then. I know we're going to discuss it a wee bit more in more detail later on, but he went down the road of I've got no complaints, and I genuinely don't know if that helps. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm keen on the club coming out with statements left, right, and centre. However, given the profile of Steven Gerrard and given the antics of some other managers, when it comes to referees, I think if Steven Gerrard comes out and makes a comment, and he doesn't even need to be heavy with it, he doesn't need to go in hard, he just needs to, highlight some decisions and some inconsistencies, then that does put a wee bit of pressure on the next referee that's coming into to referee a Rangers game. If those comments are in the paper, in the press, or doing the rounds in the build-up to a big game, then the referees are aware of that. You know what I mean? And other clubs go down that route. Make no bones about it. Make no mistake about it. Other clubs, and we all know who we're talking about here, go down that route. They publicly come out and make comments about referees and put pressure on them. Now, it's not something I'm keen on doing, but, if you're in a fight for a title and you feel you're getting treated unfairly on a consistent basis, then you maybe need to look at the policy that you're using at that particular time. If we have gone down the sort of route of diplomacy and behind the scenes conversations, but it's not working. And the whole narrative around Morelos today, again, a couple of weeks back there when we played Aberdeen, I was counting the fouls that Big Sam Cosgrove was giving away. Time and time again, foul after foul after foul. There was no outrage by the commentary team, by your Andy Walker and all the rest of them, about what he was up to. The minute Morelos is involved in anything, that narrative gets pushed. He's unstable, he's this, he's that. And I think the club now need to look at it and call it out a wee bit more. Because if they are going down the sort of diplomatic behind the scenes stuff, it's not working.
Well, first things first, the behind the scenes route doesn't necessarily mean a polite phone call and saying to the bigwigs at the SFA, please, can we try and change things, please? It just means that you're not necessarily playing this out in the public arena. And I agree with you that other clubs do that and will kind of plant stories about referees in the run up to big games to just plant that seed of doubt. But my argument is they're aided and abetted by a compliant media. And that's something that we're never going to have, or certainly not at the moment. And possibly it wouldn't quite work out in the same way. Frankie, where do you come down on this? Do you agree that we're refereed to a different standard? And if so, firstly, why is that? And secondly, how do you solve it?
It's a tough question to answer. Take it bit by bit, I think. In terms of being refereed to a different standard, I think it's fairly obvious that's been the case now for a while. Certainly when it comes to Alfredo Morelos, and I mean today's example is just another one. I mean, there's only 3 players been red carded for goal celebrations in the last 18 months, 24 months. It's Andy Halliday, Daniel Candeias, and Alfredo Morelos. Nobody else. It's okay. They're all second bookings. That's fair enough. And if you want to say the letter of the law, then they're daft gestures. I think Morelos was daft today. Obviously, the manager was annoyed with him as well. So I think it's fair enough to say that he doesn't have any complaints. But at the same time, other people get away with it, and it's that inconsistency that drives supporters mental. Not just with celebrations, with tackles, with dissent, with anything else. I mean, you didn't want to be paranoid, and I think that's why the club probably are no more public in their condemnation than what they are probably behind the scenes. I mean, I think you'll remember, as I said, that I mentioned Candeias, the red card he got last season when he blew a kiss and got a yellow card in injury time when Morelos scored the second goal. And Paisley, I think the club took that pretty seriously, and I think they went after Colin, and he didn't referee or any games for a while after that. So I think sort of back channel protestations do actually work in that sense, and I don't think you'll get any joy out of referees if you go after them publicly. I mean, we'll see what happened several years ago when Celtic and Neil Lennon did that with Dougie McDonald, and they went on strike, the referees, and clearly it wasn't really made out to be a Celtic issue, but a sort of national game issue when it was Celtic that caused that. I don't think we've got anything again for doing that. However, I do think the manager should be a bit cleverer in how he addresses it, say with the club. I mean, I think the last thing he needs a long rambling verbose statement from Jim Traynor on the club website. As Ross mentioned, we didn't really have the political or media backing for that to be taken seriously. However, somebody like Gerrard does have the gravitas for people to stop what they're doing and listen to him, and not just people in Scotland, but the national media and the European media, all because of profiles being listed by him in the last 18 months, not just because of what he did as a player, but the fact that he's got us qualifying for the last 32 of European competition. So I think you just got to box clever, and I think he's tried to do that. I think he's raised stuff recently, Gerrard, but to be fair, it isn't working. I mean, that's what the last 3 or 4 games, twice in Europe, where we've not had penalties. I mean, we got a penalty in the cup final, that's fine. The player was red carded correctly, but we should have had at least one more penalty in the same game, and Celtic won it, one offside goal. So there's clearly a problem here when it comes to officiating Rangers games. Is it cheating? I don't think so. I didn't think any referees or linesmen go out to cheat. However, is there something else that's causing them to stop and think? Is it pressure from above if they give us decisions? Is it the media coverage when Rangers benefit for stuff? Possibly. That's probably the most likely reason. But in terms of how you fix this, I'm at a loss. But this is why you pay big bucks to PR people at the club. They should be coming up with answers on that, and they're all clever enough to examine ways of doing it and strategies of doing it, because as it stands, we are being refereed to a different standard, particularly Alfredo Morelos. As much as he was daft today, last season what happened to him was beyond a joke, and it's happening again.
I'm not sure I agree with you that he was daft today, because we've seen Morelos make that gesture a number of times after scoring goals, not just to opposition fans, but to our fans and to wherever he ends up in front. I refuse to believe that the "get it right up you" gesture has travelled over to Colombia. So, unless he's picked that up in his short time in Glasgow, which I doubt, because he doesn't speak English anyway. It's just I think
he'd been booked, Ross, and I actually think he was quite lucky today not being booked earlier. In the first half, he had a few wee nibbles. I thought he was playing there were too many reminders of what he was doing last season. I thought his discipline wasn't ideal today, and I think that's why the manager didn't back him. I thought Robertson was fairly lenient with him. He had a wee nibble once or twice just before half time, which caused the fracas when the players left the field. It was Morelos that caused that by having a wee nibble, I think, at the big jailbird that plays centre half for Motherwell in Scotland nowadays. And so eventually did get booked, and then he gets his goal, and you think, just take it easy. And then as soon as he gave that get up your gesture towards the Motherwell fans, you just knew what was coming. Is it soft? Absolutely. It's crazy that somebody gets sent off for that. The Motherwell fans in that corner are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the guy, shouting everything that won't be friendly. Well done, Alfie, great goal. So of course he's got to react. And I mean, this has happened before with Scott Brown, Neil Lennon, and the narrative is always, oh, poor Neil. Of course, well, let's defend him here. The hassle he gets is disgraceful, and that's what should be the narrative here. But it won't be, because it's Alfredo Morelos. So that's when it brings us back to being refereed to a different standard. However, that doesn't mean that you can't criticise Alfredo. He'd been booked. He's just scored. There's no need for him to celebrate like that. It's daft. And if the manager's annoyed by it, then I think fans are entitled to be annoyed by it as well. We've got a huge game on Friday night away to Hibs at Easter Road, and we really need Alfredo to be playing, because he scored 27 goals this season. So his contribution on the pitch is pretty obvious in terms of what we need. And with other people not really scoring or doing the business, Defoe's not been playing much, then it's a big miss to lose him. And I think, as much as he shouldn't have been sent off today, I think it was harsh. I think the referee should have took him aside and said, last warning, we're not doing that again. And then even after the game, the referee should say, if you do that again, I'll get reported to the SFA. Fine, but he shouldn't have done it today at the end of the day. But at the same time, it's a nonsense. And as I say, I think we've got to discuss it, and I think Rangers have to discuss it, whether it's publicly or privately.
Look, my personal opinion is obviously we've all said we seem to be refereed to a different standard. There's countless examples of other players from other teams doing that gesture. I mean, 80% of goals at Ibrox scored by a visiting team are celebrated in front of Rangers fans because it is a get it right up you. I refuse to believe Morelos is there taking stick from that end of the park for the entire game, and he celebrates in front of them, doesn't leave the boundaries of the pitch, doesn't incite anything, and yet still, by the way, gets objects thrown. And I make it now 3 or 4 games in the past couple of years that section of the Motherwell stand has thrown objects onto the pitch. So, Colin, last word on today's game. Talk to me about the Well boys.
The virgins in the corner. Well, I mean, we've been there before with them. I mean, going back to the Morelos thing, I think Frankie does have a wee bit of point in saying, you could maybe level a bit of criticism at Morelos for getting involved and doing it. However, I sit in the Govan rear, and I've seen Celtic score a few goals at Ibrox over the last few years, and see the amount of goading and sort of provocative gestures that have came from the likes of Scott Brown, Lee Griffiths, the big daft boy that thinks he's a postman. What's his name again? The right back at Celtic that's left now.
Big.
Who was that? Sorry, Ross. Aye, Lustig. Right. Now, some of the stuff that I've seen for them is beyond a joke, and it's never mentioned. And we've got the Neil Lennon stuff as well. Every time he's in the dugout, there's always gestures. We had the incident with Scott Brown at Celtic Park in March there. Now, he was charged retrospectively, but got off with it. There was no punishment dished out. So that's where the issue lies here. Yeah, we could look at Alfredo Morelos and say he was stupid to get involved, but it's the consistency of it, and it's the fact that Frankie made a very good point earlier on. The only 3 players that have ever been sent off for celebrating a goal are 3 Rangers players, and one of those, the Andy Halliday one, was beyond a joke. You know what I mean? He raises his fist to the air in the centre circle. Off you go, son. Candias blows a kiss to Ferdinand. Off you go, son. I think it's a real issue, and I mean, there's obviously issues around Morelos at the moment. The narrative I'll go back to Andy Walker, how he dealt with Morelos today. Every time he's involved, he's trying to stir up controversy and make it sound worse than it actually is. The whole narrative around Morelos needs to change. And as for those boys in the corner, well, we've had incidents with them before. There was the incident with Lee McCulloch a few years back when he got a flagpole jabbed in his eye. There was the whole Fir Park ran on, invaded the pitch in that playoff game a few years back. There's been ongoing issues at that ground for a few years now, but it's never highlighted. You know what I mean? But if you hear naughty songs at Ibrox, Fair are all over it. You know what I mean? So it's not just Morelos. The whole way the club has been handled by the media, and how we're being handled in terms of punishment for whether it be action by players on the park or action by supporters in the stands, it's all to a different level from other clubs, and it needs seriously challenged. I mean, you had that incident through the week there with Fair, retweeting a very derogatory tweet about Rangers Football Club. That shows you how how impartial they are. That whole organisation's whole agenda surrounds Rangers Football Club. I've yet to read anything that they've done with any other club. It's always Rangers. And then their excuse for it is, some young boy got, he retweeted it by mistake. He thought he was on his own phone and on his personal account. But what does that say about the integrity of that person working for that organisation? Should he be working for an organisation whose whole reason for being is to question, and challenge racism and sectarianism and all these kind of things? If they've got someone within their ranks retweeting that kind of stuff, should they be working for that organisation? And these are questions that I see getting asked by Rangers fans, and it just falls on deaf ears. You know what I mean? So the whole thing, I think, needs looked at and challenged. But as Frankie said, it's really difficult. You know what I mean? Because we don't have a friendly media in this country. We don't have a media that is friendly towards the club. So it's very, very difficult to challenge these things.
No, I think you're spot on, Colin. I mean, the thing with Fair, obviously we spoke about it in the week. It was everyone's known for a number of years the agenda of Fair, and now there's proof, and they say, but it's okay because it was only visible on the timeline for 5 minutes. But there's a deeper issue here. Like you say, it's highlighting the integrity and the character of the guys at Fair. And by the way, this is no young junior employee at Fair. I struggle to believe that Fair have a large number of employees anyway, but there's not that many employees at Fair that are going to be having access to the Fair Twitter account or have the Fair Twitter login credentials. So this is someone who Fair trust to broadcast their message. So this is a guy with significance and influence at Fair is tweeting this stuff out, is retweeting it and showing what the guys there are made of. And now we know, and hopefully, Rangers have written to UEFA. We know that they've been in touch with UEFA saying that the guys that are reporting us, the guys that are causing us to have, I'm not going to say causing us to have stand closures or seat closures, because we're not exactly helping ourselves at times in that regard, but they've proved themselves to be bigoted. They've proved themselves to be corrupt. They've proved themselves to be biased and have an agenda. So hopefully UEFA can take notice of that. And
I think you're right to point that out, Ross. I mean, because the integrity of Fair is now seriously questioned. I don't think that gives Rangers supporters a free pass to now, bring out some of the tunes of old. I think we need to continue down the road that we've been, by and large, successfully sort of negotiating and navigating. We're getting there with this issue. There's still the odd song pops up, but even although fair have been compromising this, I don't think that gives us a free pass to go back to the ways of old.
No, you're absolutely right. And actually, on Thursday, when it was the biggest temptation to kind of revert to those songs that we shouldn't be singing, we were exemplary. The fans were exceptional. The fans got behind the team. The fans kept it above board, which was the absolutely best response that we could have done. So I was delighted to hear that on Thursday. Guys, we've spent a long time obviously talking about Motherwell, talking about refereeing and the standard in the country. I want to move on and have a very quick look back at the game on Thursday night, the Young Boys game, which really we shouldn't downplay the significance of that game on Thursday night. Rangers qualifying through to European football after Christmas for the first time, I think, since 2010, 2011. I noticed before the game that if we'd won that match, we'd have topped the group, and someone was saying that would have been the first time that Rangers have ever topped a European group, which would have been a remarkable achievement. I remember sitting in work watching the draw come out when the groups were drawn and seeing Porto and Feyenoord and Young Boys in that. My boss turning to me saying that's a Champions League group, and it was. So for us to come out of that group is absolutely spectacular and a real testament to the work put in by the management team. That said, Frankie, looking at the actual game itself on Thursday, I know you were watching this in the airport on your way back from your holidays. To me, that was a strong performance in the first half, and we really should have been out of sight. Was there an argument to say that we were a little bit wasteful in front of goal on Thursday?
Aye, from what I've seen anyway, we definitely should have been more than one goal up. I thought we did well for the first hour, actually. Then after that, possibly understandably, we started to maybe protect the lead a bit more than we needed to. At the same time, Young Boys clearly had nothing to lose, so they were having a go. And I think the problem was we were then wasteful in possession at that point. We were giving the ball away too easily. We were clearing it long to nobody, and weren't using the ball well, giving it straight back and not looking after possession at all. And that was causing us more problems than actually sitting too deep. I think one of the main criticisms of the manager since he's arrived has been his use of his subs, and I think he was a bit late in introducing players into the game. And saying that, it's very difficult when games are played at a high tempo for guys to go on and be positionally perfect right away. So as much as you want fresh legs for maybe the last 25 minutes, 20 minutes of games, if they're not going to get up to speed right away, and then you can cause yourself more problems than somebody maybe being a bit tired if they're making the change itself, So it's all very disappointing, I think, the result or how it ended. But I think we've got, as you mentioned, we've really got to take heart for qualifying for this group. I was pretty confident beforehand. You'll remember that in the podcast a few times that we could qualify for this, but I think some of the results have been excellent. The two results against Young Boys, ironically, have probably been our two worst results. But even in those games, I think we played well for the majority of them, and that's the positives we've got to take. Okay, we didn't top the group, probably should have, but to qualify for that group and for Feyenoord, Porto, and Young Boys, all teams that have got a European pedigree and have been in the Champions League recently, is really good going, because I don't think many people gave us much of a chance. So as much as the initial feeling of disappointment when you lose such a cheap late goal, again, I think it's fantastic that we've got through. I think the players and the manager and his coaching team deserve a huge amount of credit again, and I just hope now whoever we get in the draw. I mean, I don't think there's anybody to fear particularly. There's a lot of good teams, obviously, but I mean, we've now been at Ibrox for a long time. I think we play well away from home as well, so I think we've got a chance of beating most teams in this competition. So I think we've got to take that confidence and take it into that game and stay behind the team and let's just see where it takes us from here,
Well, aye, exactly. I mean, as Mark Gilmore says here on the stream, that we should fear nobody, and that's absolutely spot on. There's not one team looking at the list of clubs that we can draw tomorrow. Draw tomorrow, I believe, is at midday live on BT Sport. So if anyone's got that in the diary, that's when we can find out who we're getting next. There's some excellent clubs in there, but we should absolutely fear nobody. We've already surpassed the expectations, so we've got nothing to lose. And given the showings that we've done in Porto, against Porto and Feyenoord at home, to take the young boys' results aside from that, there's not one team that we couldn't get a result against on our day. And we know that we put in big performances away at European sides. We know that we can do that. Even think back to results against Legia Warsaw in the qualifying or Midtjylland. We've put in some incredible shifts away from home. We know that we can get a result against anyone. So I think Mark's absolutely right. We should fear nobody. Also, a really good point here on the YouTube from Mickey. Morelos is the first player in the club's history to net in 4 successive European ties. Wasn't aware of that at all, actually. That's a phenomenal stat that hopefully puts to bed all of this nonsense about him not scoring in big games. Colin, if we go back to the game itself, I think we had a strong first half where we were moving the ball about fantastically. We should have got 1 or 2 more goals for the effort. But to me, there was a real dip in the second half. It looked like there was tiredness, fatigue. We were sitting deeper and deeper and deeper and inviting pressure from young boys, and it was a bit sloppy. There seems to be a bit of a recurring pattern now that Rangers can't perform solidly for 90 minutes. We've heard that a lot from Gerrard in his post-match press conferences. He'll say things like, I didn't recognise us in that first half, or we weren't where we wanted to be second half. Does it concern you that we can't seem to string out a consistent 90 minutes?
I think that was sort of reflective of that week, if I'm being honest. I mean, the Aberdeen game should have been, done and dusted by half-time. We should have been home and hosed in that game. We ended up drawing it. We should have won the cup final. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think even Scott Brown and Neil Lennon have acknowledged that they got away with one. We end up losing that. And then it's the same against young boys. First half, we get the goal and we look like we're going to go on and win the game fairly comfortably. And then the second half is the total opposite. And I do find it quite concerning that because these things seem to come when there's a wee bit of pressure involved. You know what I mean? So obviously Pittodrie is always quite a tricky place to go. The minute Aberdeen got that first goal, you could feel the sort of momentum swing. And I think Steven Gerrard was right in his sort of post-match comments that he was looking at his leaders to do something, and they didn't. We didn't manage that game well at all. I think Frankie's got a good point about some of the substitutions that the manager used. The Celtic game, it's the same. I started to get the fear at half-time. We've absolutely steamrolled them the whole first half, chance after chance. And you started to get the fear a wee bit. When they go 1-0 up, that's when you think, oh, is this going to be one of those days? The minute Morelos missed that penalty, I knew. I just felt then that this is it. It's just not going to be our day. So again, from a position of strength, we end up losing the game. And it was the same on Thursday night. We've controlled large parts of that game. Young boys, for whatever. I mean, I think it was Moscow last season, wasn't it? There always seems to be a team, and when we play in Europe, that we just seem to struggle against. And it's ironic that it's young boys, because we've done so well against 2 teams that you would consider to be, big European names in Porto and Feyenoord. We've done numbers on them, yet couldn't go over the line against young boys. So yeah, I think it is concerning. I think it comes down to game management. I think that's been an issue probably since Steven Gerrard came here, and I'm not taking anything away from the huge strides that he's taken us on. He has improved the club immeasurably. That doesn't mean we're perfect. There's still obviously issues there to be ironed out, and I think the game management side is one of those things, and those 3 games prove it. In my opinion, based on the performances, we should have won those 3 games, and we didn't win any of them. So yeah, I think it is a worry.
And did the nerves kick in for you then, Colin, when the goal goes in, the Borna Barisic own goal? We had a comment here from Mark on the YouTube stream that he had to step down into the stands and watch the last 4 minutes on the telly because he couldn't handle being in his seat. Were you worried that we might start to throw the whole thing away and end up not qualifying?
Well, obviously, that becomes a real sort of prospect, because the guy in front of me had been providing updates at the other game, and at one stage I think Porto were drawn and we were winning, so it's like, well, we're through. It's all very comfortable, it's all very good, and all of a sudden Porto are winning, and then young boys equalise, and you're thinking, well, we're actually staring at the exit door here if we concede another goal. And I think this team is a nervous team when it's in those situations. We were sitting deep, inviting pressure. I mean, the goal itself that we gave away was a bit farcical, really. So I mean, I don't know. Part of me thinks that this will improve when they get the first trophy under the belt. You know, until they get that, I just kind of wonder if that nervousness is always going to be there. But it's something they need to try and improve upon, because, as I said, those were 3 huge games. We should have won all 3 of them, which would have brought us a trophy last week. And we didn't win any of them. And we ended up, you know, it was squeaky bum time for the last 2 or 3 minutes in that Young Boys game. And for a couple of minutes, I did think, we're going to blow this here. You know, so you're theoretically going for winning the group to going out in the space of 2 or 3 minutes. So, yeah, I think it's something we need to improve on, yeah.
Look, I totally agree with you, Colin, and I worry that this team perhaps is a worried team, is a nervous team in those situations. Frankie, what's your opinion on this? Is this something that you need to fix via coaching or via recruitment?
Via winning games, winning trophies. It's just a mentality thing. Until you win something, bring silverware, then players won't ever have that total belief in themselves. And that's why last Sunday losing that game at Hampden was such a blow, because I think if we'd won that game, it really would have put us in the driving seat in the league, just in terms of psychological momentum. And that's something that does worry me about this team, or not the team per se, but certain individuals where they have that mentality to take the extra step. I mean, I think we've seen progress in the last year or two under Gerrard, the last 18 months. Certainly for a team that didn't have any gumption to a team that now rarely fear anybody and do have the belief in themselves that they can win games. Where we maybe lack is just that extra step, first of all, to win things, to believe that we can win big games when things go against you, i.e. if you go 1-0 down, or if you didn't maybe score when on top. And this is only something that comes through time, and we have to, as fans, we have to be patient. I mean, you guys have mentioned there that we drew 3 games. Obviously, we drew the Aberdeen game. Sorry, we didn't win in the 3 games. We drew the Aberdeen game, got beat by Celtic, and got beat with Young Burns, and I think we were all gutted by that. And it is good enough. We should have won all 3. I mean, 2-0 up against Aberdeen, dominated Celtic, and then should have been at least 2-0 up before Young Boys scored just before the 90th minute last Thursday. But at the same time, I think it's unreasonable to expect to win every single game all the time. I think to expect to go through December as undefeated is probably, or to win every game, it was probably unrealistic. I think we've got to manage our own expectations as well, and I think that will help the players somewhat. I think that there's maybe that expectation is maybe just a bit too much for some, but I think we've seen improvement on that in that regard. I don't know if that comes from the manager. I don't know if it comes naturally just because we've been doing better, so that the players themselves feel more confident and have that extra belief. But as I say at the start, I think the only way to change that is by winning trophies, and the quicker we do that, the better. Because I think we're capable of doing it. I think, as I said, I was confident we could qualify from that Europa League. We did so. So the players should be taking confidence, and so should the fans. And they shouldn't be panicking when there's stages in games when we maybe aren't playing quite as well, or if teams have the upper hand. That's going to happen. So rather than panicking and worrying and rushing down the stairs, get behind the team and get behind the players when they give it away, and help them get that mentality, and let's drive this team to the success that I think we're starting to deserve, to be honest.
Can I come in here, Ross? Sorry, I think Frankie's made a valid point there. There was an incident at the Porto game that really annoyed me, and it was the amount of fans leaving. You know, I mean, I know we'll have the joke about the subway loyal and all the rest of it, but you want to know something that is actually becoming an issue. You know what I mean? Especially when you've got a team like this that is still trying to take that first step and win a trophy. Now, would the players respond to? Do they respond to grumps and groans and getting howled at when things are going a wee bit awry during the game, or do they respond to supporters getting behind them? When Steven Gerrard's about to deliver one of the best results in Europe in a number of years, you're looking around and the stands were half empty in sort of 85 minutes. You know what I mean? So I think the supporters also need to look at themselves here and ask themselves, Are they supporting the club in the right manner in terms of, are they getting behind them? Are they being positive? Are they trying to help the boys over the line? Or are they just expecting them to turn up and win games, as Frankie says? And when that doesn't happen, you get on their backs. And then at 80 minutes, right, I'm away because I'm going to miss my train or I'm going to get a pint in the district bar or whatever. I mean, so I think the supporters need to look at themselves here as well. We've got a team here that haven't won anything yet. They need to take that final step. As Frankie says, we need to get behind them in the right way.
Look, I think that's a smashing point, Colin. As people know, I don't get up to Ibrox as much, obviously living down in London, but I came up on Thursday because I took time off work to fly up Thursday lunchtime because this is a huge game and it was kind of a historic moment after everything we've been through to qualify out of that group and get through to the next round of Europe. It was massive, and it was massive at the end of the game. The relief, the joy, you could see it on the players, and it wasn't lost on me what an achievement that was. And you're right, from 80 minutes onwards, every 30 seconds I was standing up to let a guy out. You just think, what are you doing? Are you taking this for granted? It's a remarkable position to be in, and yet people don't want to stick around to see us achieve it, or people don't want to stick around to join in the celebrations because the subway queue might be a bit busier. I left it full time. It took me 10 minutes in the subway queue, but I would rather wait that 10 minutes to see us succeed, to see us achieve, and to share that moment with the fans and with the players than to get home and get dry.
Well, see if you went to the cinema, Ross. See if you're going to the cinema in the next couple of weeks to go and see the new Star Wars film or whatever. Do you leave 10 minutes for the end? Of course you don't. You know what I mean? Especially when a game's still in the balance, still there to be won. I don't get it. I really don't. And I mean, I always used to try and be a bit kinder on people like that and say, well, you don't know, they've maybe got a situation, but not that amount of people. You know what I mean? It's not on. You know what I mean? And I think it must deflate the players. It must deflate the manager when he's looking up thinking, Christ, I've just given them 2-0 against Porto. Best result in Europe for a number of years. It's 82 minutes on the clock and he's all leaving.
No, look, I totally agree. And what's actually frustrating is that I know everyone listening on YouTube will be agreeing as well. There's comments here saying that we're spot on. I know Frankie agrees with this point. But what's difficult is it's fans that don't necessarily engage with this kind of content, that aren't as passionate, that don't, it's not a matter of life and death. It's those guys that we need to hear from, unfortunately. And it's hard to get an explanation. Of course, you get your Northern Ireland Bears who might struggle to get back in time for the ferry, or my bus leaves at this time, and if there's been an extra long delay before half time or whatever it is, then my bus leaves and I've got to be on that bus. But the point is, it's the numbers that go. It's really demoralising. It really is. You said it yourself. Last word on the Europa League before we wrap up. Colin, in a word, who are you hoping to get in the draw tomorrow?
Look, I would like a big name, Ross. You know what I mean? I think Celtic are quite lucky in this respect. They're luckier than us in this respect. We get, even in the Champions League, we tend to get the Sevilles and all that type of thing. Teams that are going to probably essentially put you out anyway, but they're not those big names. Whereas they always get a Barcelona or a Bayern Munich or something like that. So I would think like an Ajax and Man United would be tasty. I think with Stevie G's connections to Liverpool. Obviously, I think that'd be a great tie. So a big name. That's what I want.
Frankie, how about yourself?
I'm not fussy. I would rather get a small name so we can go further, make more money, to be honest. One of the Portuguese teams would be quite good. I mean, I don't know if we can get Porto in the next round or not. I'm assuming not, but we've already proven that we can beat them effectively over two legs. Benfica or Braga, confident we could take either of them. I mean, there's various teams there that didn't frighten me whatsoever. I mean, clearly, teams like Basel and Espanyol and that, they've done well in European competition in recent years. Ghent, I mean, Belgium are one of the best international teams in the world at the minute. So they wouldn't be easy matches, but I'd fancy us to take on a lot of these teams, especially at Ibrox. But I'm just as much confident in this Rangers team in away games nowadays. So I'll take anybody, but preferably one of the smaller teams so we can progress further.
I've got a list of the possible opponents here, Ross. It's Ajax, Arsenal, Basel, Benfica, Braga, Espanyol, Ghent, Inter, Istanbul, something or other, I can't pronounce that. Lask, Malmo, Manchester United, Salzburg or Seville.
Well, look, out of that list, like Frankie says, half of those teams you've got to be confident of beating anyway. Lask from Linz in Austria should be beating teams like that. Malmo, we'd give them a right good go. And then you come up to I don't know if anyone's watched Arsenal against Man City this afternoon. They are dire. They are absolutely dreadful. And I would love, having lived in England for over 20 years now and being told how crap Scottish football is, how my nan could score for fun up there, I would love an opportunity to shut that down. So for me, bring on Arsenal. Guys, I'm conscious that obviously we've spoken a lot about the two games this week. We've spoken about the fans, we've spoken about refereeing. Just to wrap up this week, we had some big news in the week, is a new deal for Steven Gerrard. First things first, Colin, what's your immediate reaction to hearing him signing on? Obviously, he'd been in the pipeline for a little while and there've been rumours that were pretty much confirmed by him in the week. Are you happy to see him stick around?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I know he's, you know, he gets a bit of criticism from certain quarters in the media because he's not won a trophy yet, but I don't think anyone can deny that he's brought Rangers back to a level that you would expect the club to be at, you know. And I think him just walking through the door, you know, I mean, Rangers, because of the situation, you know, down the leagues and the journey back up, I mean, Rangers were always a glamorous club, and you know, when you're plodding through the Highland towns and Forfar and Stirling Albion, and you know, the level of player isn't quite the same, and I think we'd lost a bit of that glamour, you know, and we just weren't as prestigious as we'd been previously. And I think just by walking through the door, he provided that. You know, all of a sudden Rangers were, you know, the spotlight of the world media again. So yeah, and I think he's done a decent job. I mean, I don't think he's perfect. I think right now his substitutions are causing me problems. You know, there was obviously issues last season. We lost a lot of stupid points, dropped a lot of stupid points through the season. But can anyone really deny that he's improved us? And I mean, I love the guy. And I was a wee bit surprised a couple of weeks back when it was getting sort of suggested there would be an extension. But then Jurgen Klopp announced his extension, and it suddenly all made sense. So, I'm delighted that he's kicking about.
That's the point that you've alluded to there, Colin. Frankie, Jurgen Klopp signing a contract extension pretty much at the same time as Gerrard, to expire at the same time as Gerrard. Coincidence?
Possibly. I think it makes sense for Liverpool to be looking at Klopp's successor. It looks like they're going to win the league this year, first time in however many years it is, which is going to make their fans over the moon, and is going to make Klopp a legend, even if he isn't already. But I think Klopp isn't somebody that stays at jobs for overly long. So at some point he will be wanting to move on, whether that's in 2024 or before then. And I think it makes sense for Liverpool to be looking at Gerrard, that he knows what the club's about. He was the captain for God knows how long, and led them to fantastic European success and obviously cups domestically as well. And I'm just delighted that we've got him. I think it was a bit of a gamble. Clearly he wasn't as experienced as I think most of us were hoping that the successor to Coutinho would be. But I think everything, or almost everything, that Gerrard has done has failed to impress me. I think that just the way he handles himself with the media, he's a clever guy. I think he manages the players really, really well. I think he manages expectations with the fans well. I think he builds them up right when they need to be built up. And I think he's done an excellent job. And as I said earlier, I think we need to be careful not to be over-expectant. I think this was always going to take time. Celtic, their wage bill is 2 or 3 times ours. They bring in a lot more money than we have because of the lead they've had on us over the last 7 or 8 years. So this was always going to take a lot of time, and it was always going to take the right manager and the right bunch of players to be able to turn this round against all odds, if we're being fair. And so to expect Gerrard to come in and win anything last year, or win the league last year, or even this year, I think is unrealistic. I hope we can do it. I think we can do it, and I believe we can do it this season. But if we don't, I hope we don't throw the baby out the bathwater. I'm not saying Gerrard's above criticism. I think there's a lot of criticism of his use of the squad. I think he needs to try and rotate more, whether or not he doesn't trust in his players. I'm not so sure. There's some French guys I think deserve to be playing a bit more often than they do, and I hope it doesn't cost us, for example, this Friday. So I think there's definitely questions with Gerrard, but this is a guy that's learning on the job, and every step he's made so far has been really, really top drawer, and I'm really excited for the future under him. And if he left to go join Liverpool just now, who would you want to come in as manager and think could do a better job without spending a huge amount of money? I don't think we'd have a good answer on that for any of the three of us. So that news last week's fantastic, and I just hope that we can go on now under Gerrard and start winning stuff, because as I said earlier, I think we deserve to start winning stuff now. I think we're playing well enough to do it, and I just hope we have that belief amongst the players and fans that we can do it.
I think that's very, very eloquently put, Frankie. Guys, listen, I reckon that's probably all we've got time for this evening. A very, very, very busy show. So I'm sorry there's a whole load of comments on the YouTube stream there that we didn't get time to get through, but thank you very much for contributing to the show. I'd like to say a massive thank you, of course, to both Frankie and to Colin for their insightful contributions this evening. To everyone that's listening, please do make sure you head over to the website at www.gersnet.co.uk, where you can catch up on all the latest news and opinions. You get your match previews there, you get loads of articles, as well as the friendly discussion forum where you can catch myself, Frankie and Colin. Remember, as I said, the pod will be available for download from Monday morning, so make sure you subscribe to that and maybe leave us a wee comment as well. We'll be back next Sunday with another show when we're going to be taking a look back at that potentially tricky trip over to Leith, as well as discussing what is currently the unknown European opponents, but will all be a bit more clear in about, 14 hours' time. All that's left for me to say is, as always, a massive thank you for listening, for getting involved with the show, and have a great week.